Okay, big busted ladies, this one's for you. If you've been following my channel for a little bit, you know I'm a lover of moving the dart around and to correct certain fitting examples. And especially if you have a large bust, you could end up with a very large dart in a position, and that might not give you the best fit that you're looking for. So today for Turkey Thursday, we are going to be diving into what happens if you want to split up your dart to make it a little bit better fit and more balance for the bigger bust. Let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Trisha, your pattern nerd friend. We talk about all things pattern making, fitting, and sewing around here. And today, if you have not been following me for a while, then you may not have heard this, but if you have, you know where I'm going with this. My absolute favorite thing is what we're talking about today, because it is all about the dart. So the thing we talk about a lot here on this channel is how powerful the dart is and how moving it around can not only give us more unique styles in our patterns and pattern making, but also it can aid us in getting the fit that we need for our beautiful, unique bodies. So one of those things that happens often is we find a dart that doesn't work for us, and I have suggested the easiest thing to do is to then rotate that dart into another existing dart. But sometimes when you do that, and especially for my ladies or anyone with a large bust, you end up with a dart that is really big. And if you're starting with just one dart, it can really cause some problems with the other areas of the bodice. I want to specifically focus on, and because this was asked in a comment, to clarify what happens when that dart gets too large for you. What are the options and how can you split that up to balance out what is happening in the whole garment? The purpose of the dart is to take a flat piece of fabric and mold it so that it can cup the curves of the bust, or anywhere on the body, but specifically we're talking about the bust today. The bigger the bust, the bigger the dart, right? If we only have one dart. So what happens when you only have one dart and you're trying to bring all of that in to cup the mound in that area, if you're bringing all of that into one dart, it can cause the rest of the fabric to be at such a different grain line that when you bring it in, it causes other fitting issues, like maybe throwing the balance off because you're now into the bias on that area of the garment. So this is why it's something that could come up for you that you should know, especially if you are in this group. I'm going to go over to the table and I'm going to show you we have a big dart and what we can do to move it around. Obviously, we can split that dart up into two darts, and I'll talk about the different positions of where it can go, but you can also get it fancy and kind of do different types of things with your darts. They don't always have to be in the standard positions, but it gives you some options of what to do. So let's get into it and go over to the table and check it out. Hey, I just realized something. Honestly, didn't even plan this, but my top that I'm wearing is a perfect example of how you can split up a dart and have it look intentional and balance the darts evenly. So this, I didn't make this top. This was a vintage top that I got at Costume Society of America. It was a little bit small. I had to add a little bit and actually move the dart, but there is a side bust dart here. Plus we have the two tucks here. So basically tucks are just darts that aren't sewn all the way. So technically I have 3 dart placements in this top, and it gives it kind of a different look, more of a vintage feel, like they would wear more high-waisted things. There is an example of what you can do if your dart ends up being too big. And I will show you exactly how to do this on your pattern. But first, let's dive in to a little bit of a recap. So the theory of moving a dart is that you can take this one dart and move it anywhere along the perimeter of the pattern and the fit stays the same. So that means this one dart can go into the center front, into the shoulder, into the side seam, into the armhole, any of those placements, and it would still fit the same and have the same cuppage that you're looking for. You can even take this one dart and split it into 2 and create a princess seam. So utilizing this theory of move a dart, now we're going to go into what we do for our large busted ladies. Now that we know about the Move a Dart formula and how it works, because that's kind of the basis of everything in pattern making, you would know that if you're not new here. And if you are new here, I hope you get used to hearing a lot about darts because we love them on this channel. Now let's talk about the task at hand. So this is an example of a larger bust dart that you might come across. And it can even be larger than this. I've seen on some examples where this is even wider. And you'll notice, you know, if I have my center front on the straight of grain, how this starts to kick out to the side. And the bigger the dart gets, the more this kicks out to the side, where it can almost be perpendicular to the center front. That causes issues because if you are closing the dart, which is how it would be sewn when it's sewn up, that means that this grain line is starting at more of an angle. And so when it's brought together with the other dart leg, it can sometimes cause drag lines and cause fit issues to show up that you may not want just because it's all being taken out of this one dart. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you're doing a fitting and maybe you even fit it with the one dart, that's totally fine. And when you find the size that works for you, let's say this size works for you, this part is important, how much you're taking in at the dart amount, whether it's here or whether that dart's here or anywhere along the perimeter, or if it's split up into 2 or 3 darts. This amount is the dart amount that works for you. So this amount can be split up between 2 and 3 darts, but this amount is what works on your body for your bust. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind as we're going through this. So going back to what we were talking about with moving a dart. So I really suggest if you have a larger bust, if you have a larger dart that you're taking in here, to split this up into at least 2 darts. And the most common placement for that is to put it here in the side seam. Now, normally with a more average, B cup bust, I would instruct you to square out from center front and put that dart placement where that lines up. You can already see if I were to do that, it would almost look like it's angling down. If we were to close this up and I put that dart placement there, that second dart would almost be angling down when it's closed up. I would say to square out from your side seam and have it line up. You have to have it line up with the pivot point of your original dart, or the bust point, if you will. So I'm squaring out from the side seam and I'm going back to my bust point, or the pivot point, the dart point in this case. I do want to point out that I am working with a sloper, so I don't have any seam allowance on this pattern and my dart has not been backed off. This is the apex of my bust. It is the most protruding part of my bust, or the bust point. So if you're working with a commercial pattern or a pattern that already has seam allowance and a dart root, keep that in mind. It's not that you can't still do these methods. It's just sometimes seam allowance and already backed off darts and already having the dart root, it gets messy and it makes it harder to make sure this is accurate. So you have the option, you could remove those things, do the adjustment that you want to and put them back, which as a pattern maker, I find is the most accurate, especially if you're new, but that can take, more steps. And so just be mindful if you're working with something that already has a dart root and seam allowance and whatnot. If you want to put it into the side seam, our dart theory is that you can cut to, but not through the bust point from that side seam. And you can see just by rotating it, just like what I just showed you in our example, that by me opening this up and it's about halfway, now this side front is more at a straight of grain. It's not so on the bias. It's not so at a different grain than our center front. So it's going to, just by splitting it into 2 darts, balance the whole pattern, right? We don't have anything that's having to travel so far to meet the other part that it's sewn to. So that is a perfect example of how you can split one dart into 2. This is a very common dart placement, especially for slopers and base patterns. So you can absolutely stick with this. If you wanted to stick with this as your main pattern, I would back off your darts obviously, as a pattern when you're going to sew it up. And so that these two darts aren't meeting at the bust point, that's going to give you pointy boobies like the Madonna costume, which may not be the look that you're going for with most of your looks. But that is a very common placement and a very easy, quick one that you can do if you're finding that you have a big, large dart. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back. You can also turn one big dart, and a really nice way of hugging a large bust and really contouring it and getting it to fit is to use a princess seam. Like what we talked about when I was explaining the move a dart, is a princess seam is really two darts with a little bit more fine tuning. So you can put that most common princess seam placement is to have that second dart go up into the shoulder or go into the armhole. So I'm just going to, go into the armhole as another placement. This is an option for a princess seam as well. So I would just decide where I want that to go. It doesn't have to be an exact position for where that goes in the armhole. Usually you want to shoot for like the lower third is usually where that goes. And if you're wanting to turn this into more of a princess seam, you could even curve this line. It would still work the same. And we would do the same thing where we cut from where we want the dart to go to, but not through, to our pivot point, in this case, our bust point, and then you could open it up that way. So now, again, notice what's happening to our side front. We're more on a straight of grain like our center front, and it's not, this is going to pull up to meet here, and this is going to pull up to meet here, but nothing is having to travel too far that is going to distort the fabric and cause other issues. And like I said, if this was a curve, you could separate this, add seam allowance, and then you have a princess seam design. Now I want to talk about a different thing and go into if you wanted something similar to the top that I'm wearing. So before we go into this next example, I just want a little pattern nerd moment for you. What we're actually doing by drawing these lines and cutting them in, it's called a pattern plot. We are plotting out what we want to do with this dart and the dart fullness, and that gives us the instructions or the roadmap, if you will, of where we are moving these darts around to. I just thought I would share that with you because I am your pattern nerd friend after all. Let's get back into it. Now I'm going to show you the example of the top that I'm wearing. So we're going to take this one dart, turn it into two tucks, and we're going to have a side bust dart as well. So let's start plotting. Now, you want to know how far apart you want those tucks to be at your waist, or those darts if you're going to use darts. In my case, I'm going to go for having them about 2 inches apart if this was a full scale. That's just what I've chosen. It can be any measurement that you want. So that would mean 1 inch apart for this half scale version that I'm showing you today. So if I want the darts to be 1 inch apart, I am going to split that measurement up and do half on this side and half on this side. So if I want them to be 1 inch apart, I'm going to do ½ inch over here on this dart leg, and I'm just going to draw a line that's ½ inch away from the dart leg, parallel with that dart leg on that one side. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, because we have to connect it back to our pivot point, which is our bust point in this case, I'm going to go down from that pivot point about ½ inch, and I'm going to square it out from the dart leg. And I'm going to do that on both sides. ½ inch down, square it out. Now, since I've got those squared out, I can bring the angle back up to the dart point. Okay, so that is the plot. We're going to show you how to get those two darts down there. And then we want to have a side bust dart. So I'm going to do the same thing that I was showing you earlier, where I'm squaring out from the side seam, deciding kind of where I want that dart to be, and I'm going to draw a line that goes back to that pivot point. So notice all of my design lines that I'm wanting to change where this dart goes all connect back to the same pivot point, which in this case is our bust point. This is the plot. This is the roadmap that's going to tell me where I put everything. And then it's just a matter of cutting and moving those darts around. So you do that by cutting up from here, and then we're going to angle back to our dart point, or our bust point rather. So that gives me that hinge right there, you see? And then same thing on this side. So there we go. I could actually turn this into 3 darts if I want. What we are going to do is we're going to close this original dart out altogether. And then you see there are my 2 darts that have shown up now at the waist. So I'm going to go ahead and tape that closed, but we still want to put it into a 3rd position. So I'm going to cut that open, same way we did before, cutting from the side seam to, but not through that bust point, so that I can open that up there. And see how now that one big dart that I had now is been kind of placed in these 3 different positions. I'm going to put this onto some blue paper so you can really see the contrast and see what we're talking about. I'll be right back. There we go. Now you can really see what is going on. Now, these dart openings do not have to measure the same, but it probably would be good to get these pretty darn close, if not exactly the same. And then this could be a little larger or smaller. That is important. Remember when we went back, I'll go back to our original pattern. This was the one I used for the other example. This dart opening that we have on our original, that is the dart opening that works for us. So in my case, it's about 2 7/8. You know, we are dealing with half scale. So that would mean even though I've split all of these up, I still need the same amount of dart intake for my particular bust that I'm fitting, right? So I could measure, that's 1 inch there. And then I come up with 2 7/8 if I were to add up all the dart intake from it being split up. So just having 1 dart tells you how much you need to take in, but you can even split it up amongst these other positions. And one more thing to point out with this is maybe this is how you want to finish your pattern. You like these 3 darts, but you always have to back off your darts again and double check, because I'll tell you every time we do this kind of adjustment that this little middle section, just because of how it moves with the pattern, is generally a little bit longer than the other side. So you just want to true that up. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and draw our darts in. So I'm going to put my dart points for down here. Right here, that's why so they're already backed off that 1 inch or ½ inch because we're in half scale. I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe I'll do a little bit more of a back off over here. So I'm just placing that dart point in the middle of that space there and then redrawing these dart legs. Okay, now once you have these dart legs, then what I suggest you do is to fold all of these together so that you can true up whatever you need to true up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. First, just for the ones under the bust. And sometimes what I like to do is just put a little piece of tape to hold that in place. Or if you have the fabulous Sew Tights cutting system, you can use your magnets. I love this system. There is an affiliate link down in the description if you're interested in getting one. Get a little bit of a discount and it helps me out for sure. So you see how this middle section is just a little bit longer because of how we manipulated it, because we did add just a tiny bit of space there in the bust. So you just want to true that up. And if I had seam allowance on it, I'm just going to go for it because this is just an example, but you can go ahead and cut along that. And now all of the dart legs match up evenly. And then you'll want to also check your side bust dart too. Okay, because I had already started cutting off to clean up my darts, I just went ahead and cut everything out. But now I have that 1 big dart turned into 3 smaller darts. It's the same amount dart intake, and you can get fancy with this design. You can keep them as 3 darts, or if you wanted to do tucks, like on the example of my shirt, you would just only half sew those darts and then leave the rest unsewn, and then you could sew this dart fully, and that would give you a very similar design to the top that I'm wearing. And there you have it, a couple of different options of what you can do with a really big dart when you are accommodating a very large bust so that you're not causing other fit issues, or if you just want to change it up. And do know that these are just a couple of examples, a couple of different ways that you can split that dart up. There really is infinite number of ideas and placements that you can put your darts into. I mean, you could do more than 3 darts. It really depends on the look that you're going for, what kind of bodice or top that you are looking to create. So have fun with this. This is what I call playing patterns, but maybe it gives you a little bit more insight as to why you might want to split up that big dart, or if you have one big dart hugging a larger bust, why you're seeing some of the other things happening that are causing some issues that you might not like, and how to fix them. Thank you so much for joining. If you love this sort of thing, then you're going to love being on our pattern news list. That's our monthly newsletter. We do send it out usually about twice a month. We give you a freebie every month. So if you want to know all the cool things happening in the pattern nerd world that is Creative Costume Academy, we always have fun things going on. Plus, I always link in there my latest Tricky Thursday, so you never miss out on the latest video. You can also subscribe, and please share this with your friends if you have somebody who might benefit from this. It all helps my channel and helps us all learn more about pattern making and empower ourselves to make the things that make us feel good. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful, and I will see you next time.